Hello guys, welcome back. So today we are going to be discussing on the different types of shock. As you can see here, types of shock. So what are the different types of shock? We have 1, hypovolemic shock. Number 2, we have cardiogenic shock. Number 3, we have anaphylactic shock. Number 4, we have septic shock. Number 5, we have neurogenic shock. And number 6, we have obstructive shock. So what are their differences? Number 1, hypovolemic shock. This type of shock occurs as a result of, and before I go into that, this is the most common type of shock. Hypovolemic shock is the most common type of shock. And another name for this shock is hemorrhagic shock. So hypovolemic shock comes as a result of loss of blood or fluid in the body. For example, a situation where there is bleeding or dehydration, it might lead to hypovolemic shock. And secondly, we have cardiogenic shock. This type of shock has to do with the cardiovascular system. For example, if there is heart failure, a situation where the heart cannot properly pump blood, it might lead to cardiogenic shock. And thirdly, we have anaphylactic shock. Anaphylactic shock comes as a result of allergic reaction in the system. When there is an allergic reaction in the system, it might lead to anaphylactic shock, which is very, very dangerous. It is life-threatening because it affects even your breathing. And we have septic shock. Number 4, septic shock. This septic shock is as a result of an infection in the blood. For example, bacterial infection. When there's an infection in the blood, it leads to, that's a generalized infection in the blood. It leads to septic shock, and it is a life-threatening condition. And number 5, we have neurogenic shock. This neurogenic shock has to do with your nervous system. For example, a traumatic injury on the spinal cord can lead to a neurogenic shock. And lastly, we have obstructive shock. This type of shock, it has to do with maybe obstruction in the blood vessels. It can lead to obstructive shock. So the different type of shock to take note: we have hypovolemic shock, we have cardiogenic shock, we have anaphylactic shock, we have septic shock, we have neurogenic shock, and we have obstructive shock. So take note of this shock, and please don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos. Thank you. This will be the end of the video.